Hey guys. So if my voice sounds a bit rough in this video, it's because of hay fever. I actually had a really sore throat that led to me delaying the audio recording of this video, and while I've mostly recovered, I think my voice is still affected by it. Just wanted to clear this up. So anyway, let's start with the obvious. What I'm doing here has been done by a couple of other people. Yeah, nothing too special. I'm sure that if you know what Pokemon is, you all know who the Eeveelutions are. Eevee is a very special Pokemon introduced in the very first games, being the only Pokemon in Generation 1 to have branching evolutions. With one of 3 elemental stones, you can evolve this pure normal type into either a water, electric, or fire type. But that's not where it stops, because Generation 2 gave us psychic and dark type evolutions, tied into the new day and night cycle gimmick, and then Gen 4 added a grass and ice type evolution, because they were a great concept, I guess? And then Gen 6 added a fairy type evolution to promote the fancy new type, and also because they wanted to incentivize you using the new affection mechanics and actually be friends with your Pokemon. So now we have a Pokemon with 8 potential evolutions, easily the most out of any Pokemon. The only one to come close is Tyrogue. Now I'm hardly complaining about this. I think the Eeveelutions are a great concept that really help Eevee feel one of a kind. Plus, I really like the designs of all the Eeveelutions, except Umbreon, admittedly. Honestly, it's no surprise that the Eevee family have become so popular, to the point that Eevee clawed her way up to the secondary mascot status. And with 10 types still untaken, it's also no surprise that the Pokemon fandom have made a lot of their own evolution designs for the other types. I don't blame them. Designing stuff is fun, especially when some of the groundwork is already laid out for you. It makes it a little bit easier to approach. So as someone who's had his share of drawing Fakemon, it should be no surprise that I've designed my own evolutions in the past. 2 of them actually, a Ghost-type named Whispeon and a Steel-type named Alleon. I just felt that they were the most logical types to make evolutions for, given what's already been covered. I do like these designs and concepts, but I drew them about a year ago, and the way I draw Pokemon has developed quite a lot since then. So yeah, why not give them a redraw? But that's not all this video's about. The 2 redraws are really just a bonus, because there are 2 other evolution concepts I want to tackle. The first is a Dragon-type Eevee, which I think warrants a bit of context, but I'll explain when we get there. As for the final evolution, I'll leave that a secret for now. So let's not waste any more time and get going with Alleon! So to start this project, I wanted to study all of the Eeveelutions and their distinguishing traits, so that I could get some good ideas of what to do to make these guys feel more distinct. I also put some practice into drawing the Eeveelutions beforehand, mostly in my sketchbook. Though I also did this digital piece of Sylveon, partly so I could study the Pokemon style some more and try to replicate it better. Overall, I'm glad I did this study. It helped me fine-tune the line-up thickness and the shading colours especially. Now most of the Eeveelutions have a very simple elemental theming, with designs that really embody their typing. And for Alleon, I ended up basing him on a knight, hence the armour and the serious personality. My prime objective with these Eeveelutions was to create designs that are on brand with the canon Eeveelutions, but which also had distinguishing traits to make them stand out. And I'm not just talking about the armour here. For instance, Alleon has these stick-up straight ears, which none of the other Eeveelutions have, so I definitely wanted to keep that from the original design. He also had these pairs of hair tufts on the side of his head. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of how they looked. I decided to make the tufts larger and bring them closer together, taking some inspiration from the shape of Espeon's head tufts. I think they had a bit more of a helmet silhouette this way, which is a great fit for Alleon. For the rest of this design, I feel like Alleon drew most heavily from Leafeon and Glaceon, which makes sense, they are my favourites. The ears have the same kind of style as those 2, and the tail, which was meant to look like a sword, has a similar shape to Glaceon's. The little metal helmet also looks like Glaceon's head crest thing. Also, for this redraw, I gave Alleon the same eyes as Leafeon and Glaceon. I was quite surprised by how saturated their eyes were compared to the rest of the body, but that makes sense. It helps draw attention to them. As a side note, Pokemon is really good at coming up with distinct eye designs. As other Fakemon artists have said, you could play a game of Who's That Pokemon with just their eyes. I should definitely do a style study of Pokemon's eye styles. That'd be good practice for when I go to design original Fakemon. Now in terms of changes, I wanted to make Alleon's armour feel more like a part of him and less like a costume. For the front armour, I already liked the intention, I just modified it to fit the anatomy better. The backplate ended up being pressed closer onto the body to look more like natural armour, and the plates on the hind legs were flared out more, mostly just to make the silhouette more interesting. For the feet though, it didn't feel right putting Alleon in armoured boots. As a substitute, I decided to give him paler lower legs to simulate the appearance of boots. On the whole, I really like how this redesign came out. I think he feels more like a Pokemon while still keeping everything I liked about the original design. I do think the head is a bit too big, which ends up being something I did for all these Eeveelutions to an extent. But I don't mind. I'm used to drawing characters with big heads, it's just a stylistic preference. I might want to pull the eyes further apart next time I draw him though. Also, I am very confused by what's going on with those torso lines. Like, they didn't make any sense in the original design, because the darker sections are meant to be fur, not armour. I guess I didn't realise that in this redesign though. They probably won't be saying when I next draw Alleon. But anyway, now the design's complete, how about we check out the fancy Pokédex entry? Alleon, the Iron Male Pokemon. Alleon adapt to harsher environments by forming extremely durable metal over their fur. They have a chivalrous nature and will bravely step in to protect injured Pokemon. They can often be found in battles against powerful dragon types over twice their size. Okay, let's move on to our second Eeveelution redesign, Whispeon. So while I brought up Leafeon and Glaceon as my references for drawing Alleon, for this one I instead brought up Espeon and Umbreon to try and make a more distinct design. Though I ended up hardly changing anything with Whispeon's redesign. Now my primary goal was to make something very supernatural. I wanted to really embody the ghost type with this design, and the first idea I had was to give her this spooky blue fire. I thought it'd be really fun if the ears and tail were made up of plumes of ghost fire, and that it'd help Whispeon feel especially detached from the other Eeveelutions. Fitting since she's meant to be a ghost, undead and all. I also gave Whispeon some longer, shaggier fur that kind of drapes down over her sides, which I thought would help give her more of a unique silhouette. To be fair, the ears and tail already do that, but I think they suit the type well. The way they hide her body shape really reminds me of those cartoon white cloth ghosts. In the original design I also made her legs shaggier, but I decided to dial that back a bit to keep the design simpler. Pokemon designs aren't meant to have complex shapes after all. I think my favourite part of Whispeon's design would be the colour scheme. I really like the shades of lilac and cyan that I picked. They definitely fit the ghost type well. Though, I think now's a good time to mention something else that's worth considering when designing Eeveelutions, or really any Pokemon, that being the colours. A lot of Eeveelutions have one main colour and two supporting colours. For instance, Leafeon has a yellow body, green leaves and ears, and brown for the feet, eyes and inner ears. There are some exceptions, like Vaporeon who has three supporting colours with the dark blue, yellow and white, though the focus is very much on the main light blue. Now for Whispeon, what I did was a bit different, since I gave her two main colours and no supporting colours. Though to make it more interesting, I added some gradients to the flames, as well as a spooky cyan glow to the fur on the sides. I also made the legs completely cyan like the flames, just to make them a bit more interesting I guess. Maybe that's a bit too much of the cyan though, I don't know. Feel free to judge me in the comments. The actual process of making this art was kind of strange, partly because I spent half as much time drawing her compared to the time I spent on Alleon. I think part of that might have been because the colouring process was a lot quicker. But I definitely felt like I rushed the ears and tail. I made them too big, and the shapes were too messy, but also too plain. So after I finished the other two Eeveelutions for this video, which we'll get to after this one, I went back and adjusted the shapes a bit, and hey, I'm definitely glad that I did. So on the whole, while Whispeon's design is very out there compared to the other Eeveelutions, it's a pretty unique look and she was still fun to come back to. Again, I didn't change much about the design this time around. I did add some pupils to the eyes, since I'm not sure how I feel about an Eeveelution with completely blank eyes, but I made a point of making them more faded. I also really like how I gave Whispeon much larger shadows to bring more of an ominous feel. That's everything all covered, let's take a look at the Pokédex entry. Whispeon, the Spectre Pokemon. Whispeon's ears and tail are made of eerie, bluish flames, and it is said that this fire will leave burns in the afterlife. Despite their unsettling appearance, Whispeon are timid and will usually float away or vanish when approached. If trifled with, however, they will send forth a haunting influence, which sends their attackers into fits of madness. Okay, now that the two redraws are finished, let's get to talking about the two new designs. Starting with our Dragon-type Eevee, which like I said, we're going to need some context for this one, so strap in. So around the lead up to Scarlet and Violet, there was this girl in the Pokemon anime named Chloe. I don't know what her deal is besides doing Pokemon contests. I stopped watching the anime years ago. But the important thing is that she had an Eevee, and people were making a really big deal out of wondering what her Eevee was going to evolve into. But on top of that, there was also a lot of interest towards Gen 9 and the new character, Penny. And because of her Eevee backpack, there were theories that she might have a brand new Eeveelution as her ace. Given her red and blue hair, a Dragon-type Eevee seemed most likely. And between this, Chloe, and a whole lot of Eevee talk from Pokemon on social media, it seemed the stars had aligned and we were going to get a sweet new Eeveelution. But no, we did not. Chloe's Eevee actually never evolved and just stayed an Eevee. But Penny did get a full team of Eeveelutions, which I think is a really fun team that's surprisingly never been done before. Now my point is, what if Penny did get the new Dragon-type Eeveelution of our dreams? So that's going to be our third design for the video. Okay, so I decided to name this Eeveelution Draconeon. I know that most Eeveelutions have 3-syllable names, but Vaporeon has 4, so I guess there's precedent for it. And granted, there are plenty of 3-syllable names you can go for, like Scaleon, Wyveon, and easily the most overused one, Draconeon. And I know that people have definitely used Draconeon as a name before, but considering the sheer size of this fandom, that's an inevitability. So Draconeon ended up being an interesting one to design. Since I'd already used Gen 4 and Gen 2 Eeveelutions as references for my previous 2 designs, I decided to pull up the original Gen 1 trio this time. The Dragon-types kind of got a reputation for being multi-elemental, since a lot of Dragon-types learn such a wide variety of elemental moves, so I think it's kind of fitting. Now, there are a lot of potential directions you could take when designing a Dragon-type Eeveelution, since there are so many different interpretations of dragons in mythology. I ended up going for a pretty classical Western dragon approach. I'm not going to name a specific country, since my understanding of dragonology isn't that deep. But I think I did lean towards making Draconeon a very small dragon, or a dragonette as they're sometimes called. He kind of reminds me of the terrible Terror from the How to Train Your Dragon movies. I wanted to give Draconeon wings right from the start, since that'd be a unique trait for him. Unless I eventually make a flying-type Eeveelution, but they deserve wings too. One idea I had was to put a pair of mini wings at the end of the tail, but I wasn't liking how it looked, so I settled for a fur tuft on the tail instead. I also decided to give him horns, another unique trait, and since the horns were taking up the top of the head, I moved the ears to the sides and kind of made them look like elf ears, fitting for the whole fantasy vibe that dragons have in my head. For the face, I modelled the eyes after Jolteon's, and the head ended up being kind of a mix of styles, with the dragon-like nostrils but the cat-like mouth. Now when it came to the rest of this design, I actually had quite a bit of experimentation on what to do. At first, I had the idea of giving Draconeon a fur collar, not unlike Flareon, to try and push his design into Chimera territory. I thought that was a fun idea, but try as I might, I could not get the fur to look good, so I ended up scrapping it. Later on, I found myself struggling with the body. I thought it looked a bit too plain. So I looked up other Dragon Eeveelution designs for inspiration, and was pretty inspired by this design. Of course, this is based on an Asian dragon and not on a Western one, but I ended up pulling a few elements like the clawed feet and the stylized scale pattern on the body, which definitely helped this design feel less plain. Now we move on to the colours. While I originally intended to go with a cyan and red colour scheme to match Penny, I actually ended up shifting gears pretty sharply. I picked a greenish teal colour for the body, since none of the canon Eeveelutions are green, and for the 2 secondary colours I chose blue and red. I guess I was inspired by Vaporeon and Flareon on that front. I might have made the red a bit too saturated, but I wanted it to stand out from the blue, particularly with how I used the colours on the wings. On the whole, I'm kind of mixed about Draconeon and how he turned out. I think the colours might be too saturated by Pokemon standards, especially Eeveelution standards. But I do like how I combine the dragon-like traits into the ambiguous fantasy quadruped mammal. I think my favourite part of this design would be the ears. I really like the little spike I put in them. Maybe that's a bit too specific of a thing to say I like. Anyway, here's their Pokédex entry. Draconeon, the Dragonette Pokemon. Draconeon live on mountain plateaus where they have plenty of space to fly. Their wings are small, but surprisingly strong, and allow them to glide easily over long distances. When Draconeon spot prey, they dive in close and cook them to a crisp with their fire breath. They seem to have a strenuous rivalry with Alleon. So for this final Eeveelution, we're not actually going to be covering an existing type. If you watched my previous few videos, you probably know about the Deep type, a type that a friend of mine imagined in a dream on the lead up to the Paldea games, which has kind of become an in-joke ever since. It's basically all about the deep sea and deep space and Cthulhu and stuff. I've designed Cthulhu for the deep type, as well as these bioluminescent Clamperl variants, but there is one other deep type I've yet to address. Because of the time the whole deep type thing started, when people were predicting that Penny would give us a new evolution type, my buddy Eerie joked about a deep type evolution. We started jokingly calling them Deepion or Cthulhuon. And hey, that sounds like a fun way to end off the video, so why not? Let's go! So for all the other evolutions, I brought up references of the canon evolutions so I could get a good style reference. Though for this final design, I was feeling pretty confident, and I decided to instead use my other 3 evolutions as references. I did also put Vaporeon on the canvas though, since I wanted to reference their pose. Now you're probably expecting me to make a Lovecraftian horror like I did with Cthulhu, but here's the thing. The deep type isn't just meant to represent the deep sea, it's also deep space, and I haven't done any space-themed Pokemon designs yet. I remember that back when I was a kid, my main idea for a new Pokemon type was the Cosmic type, which is kind of redundant since Psychic is already the Cosmic type. Nowadays, I don't endorse adding more types, I think 18 is enough, but I still enjoy designing stuff for the deep type since I really like its aesthetics. But anyway, my point is, I really wanted to make an evolution with a starry night sky aesthetic. Now for the shape, the idea started with these flowing pieces of thin, almost veil-like fur that had come off the sides of the legs. I figured I could fill those veil things with a starry texture to fit the deep space vibe. Then for the head, I followed that same idea to build up its shape. I took some slight inspiration from Espeon on the head shape, and I feel like that carried over to the entirety of the design. She definitely looks the most cat-like out of these evolutions. Most of the body is simple black, but the really fun part came from applying the starry texture. I started by adding colour gradients to the veils, alternating between blue and orange to give that spacey nebula look. Then the next step was adding some stars to the gradients. Usually when I'm drawing stars, I use an effect brush to sprinkle them on randomly, but that doesn't work very well for the Pokemon style, which is meant to be simple and deliberate. I decided to reference the stars that Solgaleo and Lunala have on their foreheads, and mix both small and large dots with larger pointed stars, which I applied individually with another effect brush. I really like how the stars turned out. The differing sizes make them look a lot more interesting than they would have done if I just used the one effect brush. And honestly, there's not much else to say about this design. For the eyes, I heavily referenced Espeon's eyes, but I decided to lean into this Pokemon's colour scheme by giving her one blue eye and one orange eye. I can't think of any official Pokemon that have heterochromia, so this might be off-brand, but I thought it was fun, so yeah. I also put this glowing white thing on the forehead, which I originally intended to be a third eye, when I was still considering creepy Cthulhu stuff. In the end, I just left it there because I liked how it looked. So overall, this design was fun to make. Definitely the simplest one in this video, but I had a lot of fun making those starry nebula effects. In the end, I decided to name this evolution Celesteon, which kind of sounds like the name of my Lumineon fake Evo, a topic for another video. But anyway, here's the final Dex entry. Celesteon, the nebula Pokemon. Said to hail from the far reaches of space, Celesteon can often be sighted glowing in the distance at night, but appear to vanish before you can get close enough. They are the first documented Pokemon of the mysterious Deep type, but their existence has only been proven in photographs. More study will need to be made. And with that, that's another 4 Fakemon designs finished! Let me know in the comments which evolution is your favourite, which you think is the most powerful, and which one fits in with the Pokemon style the best. And hey, if you want to see me draw evolutions for the other 6 types, be sure to tell me that in the comments too. I had a lot of fun with this evolution project, and I think my Pokemon style art has improved over the course of these last few videos, though there's definitely more work to do. In fact, while writing this video's script, I actually realised that the shading in the official style has a two-tone to it, with the rims of the shadows being a lighter colour. I've just been emulating this effect by fading out the rims with an airbrush, but I definitely want to try out the two-tone shadows in my next Pokemon video. I've been really enjoying the Pokemon videos, and I have quite a few in mind for the future, so be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss them. But my next video won't actually be a Pokemon video, because Pride Month's not too far off, and I know exactly what to make for the occasion. I'll be keeping that a secret on this channel, but you should be able to figure it out if you follow me on Twitter. I post a lot of my art on Twitter and Instagram, so be sure to follow for more Mirror Samurai content. But anyway, I think that's all I wanted to say. Stay hopeful, don't give up on your dreams, consider using an Eevee on your next Pokemon playthrough, and I'll see you all next time!